So this is lesson 2 for the Unit 3 Aperture and ISO. In this lesson, we're going to go over what the expectations are for this project, what the final project should look like, and also the steps that you need to do to make this project successful. So the final product is going to look like this. It's going to be on your Google site. You're going to label it Unit 3 Aperture and ISO. And you are required to do 9 pictures for this assignment. And then there will be an option for a bonus image. The first 6 images are going to be similar to each other. You're going to stage a setting where you have at least 3 objects in a diagonal going back into space. So as you can see, these are pieces of wood going back into space. And each one illustrates a different depth of field using aperture. And you're going to be using your aperture priority mode. So this one was used in f3.5. This is a point and shoot example right here, which the lowest or the largest aperture that you could get, which gives you the shallowest depth of field, was 3.5. And as you can see, this foreground right here is significantly out of focus. The medium range one, you can see this one is less out of focus. And then finally the long range, which gives most of everything in here is in focus. You can see the difference between these 3 objects right here. You're going to repeat the same thing, just like we did in Unit 2, but with a different object so that you can get some practice. So in this one, I gave an example here with a digital SLR to show you the difference there. This is a shallow depth of field. The camera I was using got all the way down to, or opened all the way up to 1.4. And so you can see this one right here is in focus and the outside here is out of focus. And the medium range was f8. And you can see this is slightly still out of focus, but a little bit more information is visible here. And then finally with the long depth of field, everything is in focus. It's going to be advisable that you choose an object that maybe has writing on it, because that is a really good indicator whether or not something is in or out of focus. And then the third step here is to just do a simple photograph of another object, and you're going to do 3 different ISOs, ISO 100, ISO 400, and ISO 1600. These are common ISO settings you will be using in the beginning photography and probably throughout your career. Typically, you won't be going much over 1600 because you do lose a lot of quality. And what I want you to do is when you look at these, you're going to get up close. And it's really hard to see on this website right here, but this one has finer detail. And the more you go up here, if you could get in close, you can see it's actually grainier. It's going to be easier for you to see on your screen of your Chromebook or of your camera. So make sure before you upload these that you kind of take a closer look to see. It is very difficult to kind of see in this setting. And then finally, for fun, if you want to, you can do a bonus image. I would love for you to go outside at night and set your ISO to a high ISO. That means 1600 or higher. And go into your yard or outside with the street lights and try taking a picture using ISO only. Don't use a flash. Just use a high ISO and see what kind of image you can get. And try doing it without a tripod and see what your images can look like. It's just for fun, and it's just a good way to experiment with high ISO. So let's take a look at different ways that students in the past have visualized this project. You saw my examples using lotion bottles or using the pieces of wood. Here's some creative uses from other students. They used 3 sets of people's feet is one idea. And here was marbles going back into space. And then for the ISO setting here, this photographer just did an outdoor scene. And this next example was done in my classroom. using glaze, which you can see the text on here and you can see the effects behind it. And again, here with the cups. And then for the ISO, they just use one water cup here. This one was really creative. It used lights going back into space. So you could have these in your bedroom or at home, that as long as they go back into space, you can see the depth and that will work. And lockers are really good because you can see a short depth of field here and then all the way down to a long depth of field. And then for this example, it looks like some kind of trinket inside of her room. This one used a lineup of the orchestra. This is in the orchestra room. So several different cellos lining up against the wall, and you can see the short depth of field is really visible. You have to have things that are going back into space. And this student, makeup was really important to her, and she photographed different makeup products that she had, and then set up a scene outside of a plant that she had. And then this is one example of something that you could do. She set her ISO to 1600 at night, was hand holding it, and this is the image that she got. So this is something similar to what you can do. So before you get started shooting your photograph through your camera, let's go ahead and try a virtual camera to see how your pictures should look and how they should react. For this one, we're going to be setting it as if you're a DSLR photographer. So if you come over to Canon outside of auto.ca/play, this is linked in your Google Classroom. Come to this, and then you're going to practice what it would be like to be able to shoot this project. Right now, it is set to manual. For this project, last project, we did shutter speed priority. This time, we're going to do aperture priority. So right now, the aperture is automatically set to 4.5, and you can see that the ISO is turned off. That's going to be automatically set for you. And also the shutter speed is turned off. That's going to be automatically set for you. You would use aperture priority mode when aperture is the most important part of your picture. To be honest, me as a photographer, I use aperture priority mode more than I do shutter priority. Or what I do is I use manual mode most of the time, and I set my aperture first because aperture is the most important part of my style of photography. I really like to have control over what's in focus in my picture and what's not in focus in my picture. So we're going to start out with the shallow depth of field, and this online camera goes all the way down to 2.8. And I want you to do the same with your DSLR. I want you to go as open as your aperture will go. And this one is f2.8. My aperture on my lens goes all the way down to 1.4. So it all depends on your lens. Make sure you are zoomed out. That means you're not zoomed in, because the more you're zoomed out, the wider your aperture can get. Okay, so make sure you are zoomed out, not zooming in. And we're going to practice what this scene will look like and what kind of focus or not focus we're going to get with 2.8. So let's practice taking a picture. Okay, so in this picture, you can see significant blur right here. The only line of focus is right here where this line is all the way across. Notice it's an entire plane. So it's not just going to be here. If this marble is in the same line of focus as the plane, then this will be in focus as well. And then, of course, everything else is out of focus behind it. I'm going to throw that one away. Okay, let's check out what a medium aperture would look like. So I'm going to move it to f8, and let's take a picture. Okay, in this one, you can see a little bit more focus in this area. You can tell more of what the objects are, but they are still a little bit fuzzy. Same with the background here, and this is still in focus here. So your eye is not as driven to the plane as it was in the first picture, because more information is starting to become in focus. Let's throw that one out, and let's try our last one. It's going to be the longest depth of field that we can get on this particular camera. It's 22. And let's take a picture. And notice everything in here from the foreground all the way to the background is in focus. That means your aperture was very, very small and letting in a very little amount of light. Therefore, it could concentrate that light and pop everything into focus. Okay, welcome everyone. Let's do this tutorial on how to use a DSLR to create your aperture and ISO pictures. So you want to find a nice, bright, sunny window to work with. You can even get closer than what I have right now, or you can go into the shade outside is the best kind of light to work with. What you want to do is find 3 objects. I prefer to find 3 objects that are exactly the same so that you're comparing apples to apples. And you're going to set them up at a diagonal like this in a row so that you can see all 3 in your composition, but they are each at a different depth from your camera. So I've set up my camera on the tabletop so that it's similar to probably what you're going to have at home. First thing you want to do is come to your camera and turn it on. Right now I am still on shutter priority mode. I'm going to change mine to aperture priority mode, so that's AV. And I'm going to come over to my ISO and I'm going to click ISO and make sure my ISO is on auto. Okay, some of yours will automatically go to auto. Make sure your ISO is on auto. Now I'm ready to get started. I'm going to move to the back and I'm going to turn on my back screen here so you all can see. Another thing you're going to probably want to do, or you're going to have to do, is turn your focus to manual focus. The reason you need it on manual focus is because your camera has no idea which one you're trying to focus on, okay? And so you need to switch it from autofocus to manual focus. And now I can freely change my focus. So I'm going to come to the back here. And you can see right now I have it focused on the back one. I want to focus on the middle. So I'm going to focus until the word basics comes into focus nicely. That is why I like using text, because it's really easy to tell if something's in focus. Once I've got it in focus, then I'm going to make sure I put it onto the shallow depth of field. So all I have to do is, since I'm on aperture priority from my camera, all I have to do is move my dial right here and it changes only my aperture. It's not going to change anything else because I'm in aperture priority mode. So I'm going to come to my most shallow depth of field, which is 1.4. It is the largest depth of field that I have. The largest opening that I have, the largest aperture, which creates a very shallow depth of field. So I'm going to take my picture, and that's what it looks like. Okay, now I'm going to come to a medium depth of field, which is going to be on my DSLR. Let's go with 8. So I've set it now to f8. I'm keeping the exact same focus. I don't want to move my focus. And I'm going to take the picture. More is in focus on that one. And then finally, I'm going to go to the longest depth of field I can do on this camera. Looks like I can go all the way to 22. And I look through. I'm not changing my focus, not changing my composition. It's all staying the same. There we go. So let's review really quickly, using my play button, what the 3 pictures look like. So this is my long depth of view. You can see that it's f22 and everything is in focus. My second one is f8 and you can see that it's partially in focus. And then 1.4, only the middle one is in focus. Again, notice the differences. So what you're going to do for yours is you're going to do the exact same thing 2 times. So you're going to find a different object to set this up with. If you show it to me once, you can show it to me twice with a different object. After you've done your second object, you're going to do ISO. Okay, and ISO, you're going to set up a whole different composition. I don't care what it is. I'm going to remove that. I'm going to do a picture of my shoe. Why not? Here's my shoe. Okay, now I want to see how different each image looks. Here's a picture of my shoe using different ISOs. So what I want to do is I want to come to my program mode. In my program mode, I can change my ISO. My program mode will keep everything else. The camera will choose it, but my ISO, I get to choose it. My first ISO I'm going to shoot is 100. Make sure you got it in focus. I'm going to turn it back to autofocus. Actually, I'm going to change it to manual focus because it doesn't know what I want to focus on. There we go. Okay, there's my shoe. It is in focus. Sorry about the glare. Okay, I'm going to take one with ISO 100. Then I'm going to change my ISO to 400. Take the picture. And the same thing, but I'm going to change my ISO to 1600. Okay, and take the picture. Now it's going to be very difficult to see the difference in your lens, in your LCD finder, so you're going to have to look on your computer and zoom in to actually see the graphic difference between those three images. So all in all, you need 9 pictures. For the bonus picture, you can change your ISO on the program setting mode. So go to program, change your ISO to as high as it can go, and try taking a picture outside at night and see what you can get. Just try different ISOs above 1600 at nighttime and see if you can get some cool pictures outside at night. And that's it for this unit.